Well, good morning, everyone. This is Ali Azzeddin from Fourth Generation for Education. We are meeting again for a very long day, concepts across the curriculum, and I'm so excited to have Rachel this morning to start the day and to share with us a morning session, depending on where you are, about concept-based curriculum. Good morning, Rachel, and how are you doing?
Good morning, Ali. I'm great, thank you. I'm doing very well. Yeah, as you said before, we're just finishing up our day here in New Zealand as you're starting your day in Dubai.
Yes, so Rachel, just to let you know, we have 69% participant based in Asia, 3% are watching from Africa, and I can see people from Ghana. I think it's very early for them, 7 a.m. 8% are in Europe. So I'm missing the US, I'm missing the Americas this morning. It's their midnight, 13% in the Middle East and 6% in Australia. We have 74%, they are teachers, 16% coordinator, and then yes, approximately 8%, they are familiar with concept-based learning. So I'm going to give you a start, Rachel, and let's know more about you and what did you prepare for us today. A final reminder for all the participants, please click on all panelists and attendees in the chat. And if you have any question for Rachel, send it in the Q&A. Rachel, let's go ahead.
Thank you, Ali. I missed your statistic on how many people are familiar with concept-based curriculum.
80%.
80. Okay, great. Fantastic. So today, some of this will be a bit of a revision for people, and hopefully you'll also get some new ideas. And what I really wanted to do today is to spend a little bit of time kind of, I guess, busting some of the common myths around concept-based curriculum, because there's quite a few ideas around concept-based curriculum that are really prevalent across schools. And so I wanted to address some of those and just give people an opportunity to think about where their own practice sits in terms of concept-based curriculum. But before we launch into that, let me introduce myself. So as Ali mentioned, I live in New Zealand, and I was an experienced elementary, or in New Zealand we would say primary school teacher, and a PYP coordinator for many years. I worked in New Zealand, in Brazil, in Egypt, and then in Frankfurt as a curriculum coordinator before returning home to New Zealand with my family. I'm now working as a full-time educational consultant and workshop leader, specializing in concept-based curriculum. And for me, that used to mean several trips a year, traveling around the world to different international schools and running open workshops in different places. But this year, that's meant making the shift to online learning. And so we were actually really fortunate. My company, Professional Learning International, launched our first online workshop in February this year, just before we sort of knew much about COVID and the impact that it was going to have this year. So we were fortunately prepared to make that transition to online learning, and we recently launched our 4th online workshop. So our Professional Learning International provides now both online and face-to-face workshops once we get moving again. Right now, we can't get out of New Zealand because we have to come into 2 weeks of quarantine on the return. So it's staying put for us. I've co-authored 2 books, Concept-Based Curriculum Instruction for the Thinking Classroom with Dr. Erickson and Dr. Lanning, and Concept-Based Inquiry in Action with my good friend and colleague, Carla Marshall. Now, for me, this all came about quite a few years ago when I was working as a PYP curriculum coordinator. I wanted to understand the role of concepts in a curriculum in more depth. So like you, Ali, I became a certified concept-based curriculum instruction trainer. Both Ali and I were trained in Montana with Dr. Erickson, and really deepened our understanding of concept-based curriculum and gave us the skills to lead workshops for others. I now host the Concept-Based Curriculum Instruction Institute to certify trainers. We usually do that in the Netherlands, but this year, actually tomorrow, I'm getting up at 3 a.m. to launch our very first session for the online version of the Concept-Based Curriculum Instruction Institute. So that's a bit about me, but let's keep moving and focus on what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to give you a little bit of background in terms of what do I mean when I'm talking about concept-based inquiry? And then I want to look at what does an interdisciplinary unit look like in terms of concept-based curriculum, because there's some common misconceptions here that I want to have a bit of an opportunity to address. What is inductive teaching, and what is the place of inductive teaching in a concept-based classroom? And how can we support the development of conceptual thinking? So I've got a couple of practical strategies at the end that teachers can go away and try in the classroom. And then I'll share a bit more about how you can learn more about concept-based curriculum. So in this book, Concept-Based Inquiry in Action, my colleague Carla and I really wanted to support teachers in transitioning from the written curriculum that they developed to practical strategies. So we wanted to bring together the two educational pedagogies, inquiry-based learning and concept-based learning. So when we're talking about inquiry-based learning, we're focused on active questioning to drive learning. And when we're talking about concept-based learning, we're focused on building transferable understandings in a curriculum as a result of learning, to organize our thinking and to be able to support transfer of learning. So let's sort of take a look in a little bit of detail at each of those individually, and then we'll look at some strategies that support a concept-based inquiry approach. So if we think about inquiry learning, there's really a continuum in a classroom in terms of how we can approach teaching, from direct instruction at one end to discovery learning at the other end. Now, in a concept-based inquiry classroom, there is a time and a place for a small amount of direct instruction, but most of our teaching will be either through structured inquiry, guided inquiry, or open inquiry. And as we move from the very structured end of the curriculum to a more open approach, we're giving students more choice in terms of the unit and in terms of the learning engagements that they're involved in. Discovery learning is really at that far end of the continuum, and it's not an approach that we use in a concept-based inquiry classroom for the simple reason that it's not well supported by research. Discovery learning is a bit more of a free-for-all, where students have very little support and guidance from the teacher. So it's not an approach that we would use and or recommend in a concept-based inquiry classroom. When it comes to concept-based curriculum, really at the heart of understanding a concept-based approach is understanding how knowledge is structured and how processes are structured. So this is based on the work of Dr. Erickson and Dr. Lanning. And we don't have a whole lot of time today, but I do want to briefly dig into this because it really is at the heart of understanding how concept-based curriculum works. So Dr. Erickson developed the structure of knowledge. And in the structure of knowledge, this is a bottom-up structure. So we actually begin with the topic. And from our topic, in this case, 20th century migration, people on the move, we're going to draw out concepts. And then we'll explore the relationship between those concepts in order to build conceptual understandings. So conceptual understandings, or they're sometimes called generalizations, in the PYP curriculum, that would be your central idea, and the MYP, your statement of inquiry. Those conceptual understandings are a statement of relationship between two or more concepts. So in this example here, we start with our topic, which is 20th century migration, people on the move. And from that topic, we'll draw out concepts such as migrant, beliefs, prejudice, opportunities, challenge, and culture. Now, it's important to remember that our topic is locked in time, place, and situation, but these concepts will transfer across time, place, and situation. And then we explore the relationship between concepts, and we might want our students to come to the generalization that, excuse me, one moment. Economic, political, cultural, and environmental opportunities and challenges can motivate people to migrate. So that's your big idea, if you like. That's the understanding that we want our students to come to as a result of the learning. We might also want students to understand that differences in beliefs and cultural practices may lead to discrimination, isolation, or prejudice. Now, you'll note in both of these generalizations, we do have a qualifier. So in the top one there, we've got the qualifier may. because differences in beliefs and cultural practices sometimes lead to celebration and great diversity. So it's important to recognize that this idea is true, but not necessarily in all situations. And the same in the second one, we've got can motivate people to migrate, because not all people who face economic or political opportunities or challenges actually end up migrating. So we have that qualifier there. Now, teaching to these big ideas in a curriculum helps for students to move beyond the facts and the topic that's locked in time, place, or situation, to see broad ideas that transfer beyond the context of that unit. If you want to know more about the structure of knowledge, you can refer to these two books, so Concept-Based Curriculum and Instruction for the Thinking Classroom, which I co-authored with Dr. Erickson and Dr. Lanning, or Transitioning to Concept-Based Curriculum and Instruction by Dr. Erickson and Dr. Lanning. Now, Dr. Lois Lanning also developed the structure of process, which is a complement to the structure of knowledge. And this is where we support students in building understandings about processes, strategies, and skills. So if we wanted our students to understand the writing process in more detail, and this could be in that same unit on migration, we could have students who have read a number of books about migrants, like The Color of Home, or One Green Apple, or The Migrant. We might then be referring them to the way that the authors use dialogue, narrative, and action, in order to understand that authors use dialogue, action, and narrative to help the reader understand the character's feelings. So here we're looking at how does the author help us understand the migrant's feelings in this case, or the character in the story. But that idea about character transfers beyond our unit on migration to any text that they're reading or any character that they want to understand, so that they can, and also so that they can replicate that in their own writing. If you want to find out more about the structure of process, then you can refer to these two texts. So the structure of process is included in the other two texts that I shared, but Dr. Lanning goes into much more detail about it in designing a concept-based curriculum. And then she co-authored a book with my colleague, Tiffany Brown, who then goes into more practical strategies for literacy teachers. So I would actually recommend, did you want to add something to that, Ali?
I wanted to say that I don't have this purple one. Maybe I need to order it for my professional library.
You absolutely do. It's a very practical book and breaks down unit and lesson design for literacy teachers, because there's a number of teachers now who, particularly in the PYP context, who feel pretty comfortable designing their units of inquiry, but transitioning to designing concept-based literacy units can be a bit more of a challenge. And so this is a great resource to refer to if you're ready to design your own concept-based literacy units. So quick little revision in terms of, is it a concept or is it a topic? If you're trying to decide if something is a concept or a topic, then this is Dr. Erickson's definition. A concept is an organizing idea or mental construct. It's timeless, universal, abstract to different degrees, represented by one or two words, and examples share common attributes. So let's do a quick little engagement with our audience here. Is culture a concept or a topic? Just let us know in the chat box.
So concept.
Fantastic. We've got a switched on group here. It is a concept. And ecosystem?
And again, people are still writing concepts. Some people are writing topics. So concept, topic, concepts, topic, okay, for some people.
Okay, great. So in actual fact, ecosystem is a concept because we can think about, there are multiple examples of ecosystems. The idea of ecosystems is timeless. We've had ecosystems forever, and hopefully we'll have ecosystems in the future. It's a universal idea, and the examples of ecosystems will share common attributes. So we can just run it through that test. One more, the European Union, concept or topic?
Yeah, and now you have a full list of topic in that chat.
Absolutely. So if you're wondering if something is a topic, typically topics are locked in time, place, or situation. And so we've got obviously European, and it's the European Union was developed in a particular time period. So that is most definitely a topic. We've got a great group here, Ali. They're pretty switched on.
Yes.
Okay, so before we go any further, are there any questions on this?
I had a question, but I answered it, and I would like to share it with you, Rachel. One attendee is from MYP, so middle school program, and you mentioned statement of inquiry, and she said, like, do we pick our statement of inquiry from the structure of knowledge or the structure of process? And in my reply, I said it depends on the discipline, Rachel, right? Or it depends on how they want to guide their unit. So would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So some disciplines are typically knowledge-based, like social studies, science, mathematics. So if we're working in a knowledge-based discipline, typically our statement of inquiry will be from the structure of knowledge. But if you're working in a process-based discipline, like literacy, the arts, design, then your statement of inquiry would be from the structure of process, focused on the processes, strategies, and skills. So it does depend on the driving discipline there. Great question. Thank you.
Good. Rachel, one more question. So this is related to all the reference that you are sharing and the books that you are sharing, and they are asking about a book for early years. And so do you have something in mind, or do I need to invite them for our early years session this afternoon? Because we have a specific session for concepts in the early years. Go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, there you go. You'll probably get some good recommendations there. Yeah, so these books here that we have shared are for full curriculum, and it's about really understanding how we design units and concept-based curriculum, but it's not a book that is specific to early years. No.
Yeah, we have someone in the chat, Uniarti. I hope I spelled the name correctly. She said the concept-based curriculum from Rachel and Carla is applicable for all grade level. So this is a good recommendation, and maybe they can look at the book. And then for the people who are asking about the early year session, I'm going to share with you again where you can find all these details in the chat. Rachel, we can continue.
Okay, perfect. So my next question for the group is, in a concept-based curriculum, is it okay to have just one conceptual understanding for a unit? Just let us know in the chat with a yes or a no. What do you think?
So we are getting yes and no, yes and no, yes and no, yes, 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 and again a no, yes, but it will be limiting for the student, yes, it would be better to have more, so it depends, no, why not? You have all the variation of the yes and no.
Okay, fantastic. So this is very common practice to have just one conceptual understanding in a unit. But if we think about it, typically our units are between 6 and 8 weeks. And if we have just one conceptual understanding, what we're saying is we believe that students are only capable of understanding one idea in 6 to 8 weeks. If you're going to invest 6 to 8 weeks in a unit, I personally believe that our students are capable of more than one idea. And that we can support them in coming up with 5 to 9 conceptual understandings in a unit. Now, if you've only got one so far, that's okay. That's, as I said, it's very common practice. But my challenge to you is to start to explore what it's like to have additional conceptual understandings in a unit. I mean, we certainly recommend 5 to 9 in a unit. And when you map out those conceptual understandings, it brings much greater depth and rigor to your unit in supporting students in building understandings that transfer across the curriculum. And here I want to return to that question earlier from MYP about the statement of inquiry. We talked about if it's a knowledge-based discipline, the statement of inquiry would be from the structure of knowledge. And if it's process-based, it would be from the structure of process. But we also know that all disciplines draw on both knowledge and skills. So you don't mix knowledge and skills within one conceptual understanding. You have separate understandings to address each. But in any unit, we want to make sure that we have conceptual understandings from both structures, that we do have some that are skill-based. So if it's a knowledge-based discipline, we would typically have 5 or 6 that are drawn from the structure of knowledge, and a couple of understandings that are drawn from the structure of process. And then the inverse would be true if it's a process-based discipline. Most of our conceptual understandings would be from the structure of process, but we would have a couple of understandings drawn from the structure of knowledge. So something to challenge you for all of those who are currently working on one, well done for having your conceptual understandings in a unit. But my challenge for you is to design a unit that has more than one conceptual understanding in your unit. So next question.
Rachel, I have just a comment. Melissa mentioned that we can have a one conceptual understanding and maybe co-construct the other with the student. And I think this is a very good practice, yeah?
Well, let's talk about this one, because that's exactly where we're going next. Well done, Melissa. In a concept-based inquiry unit, should we share the conceptual understanding with students early in the unit and post it on the wall? What do you think? Yes or no? Let us know in the chat box.
You have a very big no, you have another no, you have some yeses, and then you have the no coming again and again. Yes and the no, it depends, why not? So mixed answer for this one.
Okay, so again, very, very common practice. And in actually something that for a very long time was widely promoted in IB schools. We're starting to see a big shift in their thinking now. So we believe, again, that students are capable of coming up with understandings for themselves. And that's what Melissa was talking about. So let me share that with you. So again, myth busted, we shouldn't be sharing those understandings with students at the beginning of the unit. We want students to build those understandings for themselves, as Melissa's suggesting, that co-constructing. But when we are co-constructing those conceptual understandings, we still, in our unit design, articulate the 5 to 9 understandings. We don't tell students what they are in advance. We want students to build their understanding for themselves. And the way this works is moving from a deductive approach. In a deductive approach, we would share the understanding at the beginning. Students would explore factual examples, and then they would validate that generalization or prove that generalization. But in a concept-based classroom, we want to move to an inductive approach. So this is where we begin by exploring factual examples, help students to organize that information, look for patterns, make connections, and then form generalizations themselves. This way, to me, this is the ultimate in student agency. If we want to promote student agency, we need to honor our students as thinkers, and thinkers who are capable of building understandings for themselves. So we moved to an inductive approach where students build their own conceptual understandings. Now, I did just say that we would articulate these in our unit planner before students started their inquiry. Sometimes students will come up with one that you don't have in your unit planning, and that's something to be celebrated. That means that you've got conceptual thinkers in your classroom. So that's great too. But we do want to make sure that we've got to do justice to our curriculum and make sure that we're supporting students in building conceptual understandings. So we do want to map those understandings out in advance and not just leave it to chance. Any other questions before I move on, Ellie?
Yeah, we have some questions, Rachel, about like structure of knowledge, structure of process. And then Nisha is asking, does every unit should look at both structure?
Yes, yes, ideally. So the only really exception to this is if we're working on designing a literacy unit for our very early readers. So if we have, if you think about your readers in kindergarten, typically their texts are, I went to the shop, I went to the park, I went to school. So there's not a whole lot of content there to draw out themes of the text and structure of knowledge. So that unit could be all process-based. But once students get a bit older and there's a bit more to comprehend in the text, we'd be expecting to have something from the themes of the text coming through in structure of knowledge, but most of our understandings would come from structure of process. So yes, all units would have some knowledge and some skills, and that will be reflected in the understandings, but it won't be a 50-50 balance. Okay, so the discipline determines the number of generalizations from each.
Okay, good.
All right. So I wanted to dig into a little bit more about concept-based inquiry here. And this is a model of concept-based inquiry that my colleague Carla and I developed. And the reason that we developed this is we realized that students and teachers needed a bit of support in terms of thinking about how we use that inductive process to come to the generalization. And then what do we do with that generalization? So we developed this model of inquiry that has 6 phases. The engage phase is typical of other models of inquiry, but the focus phase is somewhat unique. So the focus phase is where we focus on understanding individual concepts before we start to explore relationships between concepts. We also focus here on some of the case studies that we'll be exploring later in the unit, but that concept formation is understanding a single concept, and before we're expecting students to start to see patterns and make connections and connect concepts together. We then have our investigate, which is your research part, and a part of every model of inquiry where students are researching. But our next phase is organize, where we want to be quite intentional and explicit about helping students to organize information so that they're able to see patterns and make connections. And once we've done that, then we've set them up for success and we've done the scaffolding that they need in order to support them in generalizing. So that's that inductive process where students will come up with generalizations or conceptual understandings for themselves. And then the final phase is transfer. So we want to give students the opportunity to see how that generalization fits other contexts or other situations. Action is also a part of this phase of transfer. So when we take action on our learning, that's transferring our learning to a new situational context. And you'll notice that reflect goes right around the outside because reflection is a part of all of the phases of inquiry.
Rachel, before moving, I have a question from our attendees on Facebook, and then Jesse, I will link it to the inquiry model that you just shared with us. To promote student agency, I designed the unit with my students. So do you recommend this approach? And I think if we are really implementing an inquiry approach where students are engaged, they are investigating, and then they are making their generalization, it's by itself leading to your inquiry cycle as well, no?
Absolutely. And so I think that students are capable in being more involved in the unit design once they're very familiar with a concept-based approach. Once they're familiar with building big ideas. But students need to be familiar and comfortable with generalizing, and teachers need to balance, I think, the student input with the curriculum that they need to design. So yes, there's great value in giving students some ownership in the unit, but I don't know that that's necessarily full kind of blank slate to design a unit, because we do have curriculum objectives that we're responsible for covering. So it's finding the balance there. And moving, along that continuum. Sometimes it's quite structured, sometimes it's more open and students have more involvement in that unit design. Great question, thank you. All right, so what we're going to do here is a little learning engagement called spectrum statements. So it's changing the poll a little bit. I know Ali's set up a poll for this one.
Yes.
And this is a strategy that you can use in your classroom using spectrum statements. If we were doing it in a real, not in a virtual space, but in a real classroom setting, we would create a line across the classroom. And here the question is, in a concept-based curriculum, the connection between disciplines is primarily through one or more concepts. So you can see that up the top of the poll, the statement. And I want you to let us know in the poll, do you strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree?
Oof, so the movement between strongly agree and strongly agree and agree is really very fast. So the attendees are answering, and then we are getting some few disagree. I'm going to give them a few more seconds to allow all our participants to vote. 50% of them voted so far. So, and then I will let also the people on Facebook maybe to put their answers, strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. And so good morning to Raja. She said agree on Facebook. People also are sending their answers in the chat box. And let me stop the voting here and share with you, Rachel, and share with everyone. So we have approximately 60% they agree, 37% they strongly agree, and then 3% they disagree. So what would you like to
Okay, so we've only got 3% on the disagree side, and everyone else either agrees or strongly agrees. Okay, fantastic. So let's go on to the next one. I'm not gonna comment on it just yet. Let's go on to the next statement. An interdisciplinary unit must include a minimum of 3 subjects or disciplines.
I'm going to pull out my poll and I will launch it. Let's go again. For the people on Facebook, an interdisciplinary unit must include a minimum of 3 subjects or disciplines. And here our interaction with the 4 answers is completely different, Rachel. Again, I'm giving the people the time to collect their answers, and it's so interesting to see all this interaction. We have around 400 live here on Zoom, and then around 40 people live on Facebook. And I'm giving them a few more seconds, and then I'm going to share with you the results. Yeah, it's so interesting here what we are seeing, or what I'm seeing. I'm not sure if Rachel, you are seeing the statistics, but
no, I can only see the poll. I'm waiting with bated breath to see.
Okay. So let me go and do the sharing now. I gave everyone around 1 minute. And so share results. I have 10% strongly agree, 48% agree, 39% disagree, and this time we have 3% for strongly disagree.
Okay, interesting. Pretty even split there, really.
Yes.
So
yes.
I'm assuming that those that disagree think that an interdisciplinary unit can have just 2 disciplines, and that's the basis of your disagreement. So thank you all for sharing your opinion. I've got one more. But before I look at that, I do want you to think about how you could use spectrum statements with different types of statements in your classroom. Yes. So this is a way to engage students in getting them interested in the unit, sharing their opinion, sharing their prior knowledge. A great way to assess students' thinking. So the last one is, in the workplace, different professionals come together primarily around a common topic, issue, or problem.
So in the workplace, different professionals comes together primarily around a common topic, issue, or problem. Strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. Feel free to answer on Facebook via the chat or on Zoom using our poll option. And as you can see, the interaction that is happening, you can always teach online in a very interactive way. So thanks, Rachel, for including this activity and modeling best practices with all our attendees today.
Well, look, it's been really interesting when we make this move to online workshops. Pretty much all of the strategies that we use in our book, if you can use a combination of polls and breakout rooms, you can adapt these strategies. And the other day I was using jam boards so that we could move post-it notes around. It's pretty flexible. You can use a lot of the strategies that you'd use in the classroom in an online setting.
While I'm collecting the answers of the people, I would like to remind them they can request a certificate of attendance. It's a paid certificate of attendance. This is how you can support all our work and all the workshop leaders who are with you today for a whole day about concepts. A second session will be about assessment and concepts, music and concepts, early years and concepts, PE and concepts, additional language and concepts, and we have a very specific session in Arabic for our Arabic speaker. So I shared with you all the details in that chat. Going back
to a fantastic lineup, Ali. You've done such a great job to pull together such a great team. Well done.
I think this is the beauty of those thematic day, Rachel, when we are starting with a very topic and then we are going into the different subject or the different areas, so everyone can feel involved and interested in attending. With your third statement, we have 29% strongly agree, 61% agree, 10% disagree, and then 1% disagree, strongly disagree.
Okay, so now we've got a bit of an interesting problem because we've got people agreeing with this. In the workplace, different professionals come together primarily around a common topic, issue, or problem. But when we talked about in the classroom, we're saying that the disciplines come together around one or more concepts. So now we've got something different happening in the classroom to what happens in the real world workplace situation. And it's true, I believe that in the workplace, different professionals are not coming together around a concept. We don't have people say, hey, let's have a symposium on change. And let's see, you know, we'll bring together the police force, and we'll bring together someone from the medical profession, and we'll bring together political representatives, and we'll all talk about change from different perspectives. That's not why they come together. They come together when there is a specific problem or issue. They come together because of a global pandemic. COVID's a perfect example of this. We have medical professionals who are working to provide the support and healthcare that people need. We have scientists who are working to provide vaccines and provide drugs and therapy for those in need. We have politicians who are working to kind of navigate the when do we have lockdown, when do we keep people separate. We have educators saying when is it safe to, working with politicians saying when is it safe to open schools. So it's actually a problem, topic, or issue at the heart of that integration. But so often what we see in schools is this, a multidisciplinary approach where we have a common topic, but then our subject areas are working just with that common concept, not topic. So for example, if our concept was diversity, then our science teacher might be working on genetic diversity, our social studies teacher might be working on cultural diversity, our business studies teacher might be working on the gender gap and hiring policies. But in actual fact, those disciplines aren't working together in any truly meaningful way. But it's something that's quite common in schools as an approach to concept-based curriculum. Everybody studies the same concept, but then you don't necessarily work together. But what we recommend with concept-based inquiry is that we use an interdisciplinary approach, but the piece that's bringing the disciplines together is not the concept. It's a common topic, problem, or issue. And through that common topic, problem, or issue, each discipline is building or bringing together their own supporting conceptual understandings. So for example, a student will learn to write a persuasive piece of writing in English language arts. And in doing so, build understandings around the way that writers use facts and evidence to back up their opinion in order to persuade others, might be their conceptual understanding off the top of my head. In maths, they're working on creating graphs and helping to represent information and represent data in ways that can be easily interpreted and coming up with conceptual understandings there. And then they're using that learning when they write a persuasive letter to the editor about the rights of migrants in a social studies unit. So it's actually still the topic that is bringing together the disciplines, and each discipline is then contributing knowledge and skills to support that topic, problem, or issue. So here again, when we work from the structure of knowledge and structure of process, it's a bottom-up process. We're working from the topic to build the concepts and conceptual understandings. So myth busted: in a concept-based curriculum, connection between the disciplines is primarily through one or more concepts. It is primarily through the topic, problem, or issue. And then the conceptual understandings are ways of supporting finding that resolution or working towards that, understanding that topic, problem, or issue. So I did promise we don't have very much time. I am very aware of the time. I've got about 5 minutes left, and I wanted to share a couple of practical strategies that you can use, that you can take away and use in your classroom on Sunday or Monday, or whenever you're back in class. So
and then we will have time for questions. So just to let everyone know that, yeah. Yes.
I'm making sure that I'm only taking up about another 5 minutes so that we've got plenty of questions time. So I did talk about in our concept-based inquiry model, an important distinction is this focus phase, where we help students to understand a single concept before we explore the relationship between concepts. So I wanted to just give you an opportunity to share a really simple strategy for doing that. This strategy is called is not. And the way the strategy works is we share examples and non-examples of a concept, and we ask students to vote. Is this an example or is this a non-example? Now, if I was doing this in the classroom, I'd probably create opportunities for movement. So I would ask you all to stand up if it is an example and sit on the floor if it's a non-example. Or I might ask you to put your hands on your head or put your finger on your nose. But given it's a virtual setting and we can't see everybody's video cameras, we'll just stick with the comment box. So all you need to type in the concept in the comment box this time is or is not. So Sarah, and this is the concept here is migration or migrant. Sarah moved to France for a year. She will be studying French and working as an au pair. Is Sarah a migrant or is she not a migrant? Let us know in the comment box.
So is or is not. So our first, we are getting a yes, we are getting no. So you have the both options coming in that chat.
Both. So we've got a bit of a mix here. Is
Yes.
and is not. Okay, excellent. So next one. In 1812, James was sent to Australia as a convict for stealing a shirt off a washing line. He never returned to England. Is James a migrant or is he not a migrant? Just type is or is not into the chat box.
So going back to the chat, that is going really very fast. I am having this time a lot of is.
Is, all right. Yeah. So James is a migrant. All right, and let us know why. Why is James a migrant and Sarah not a migrant? If you did think that Sarah wasn't a migrant.
So waiting for the why. He doesn't return home. It's about that time. Sarah will return. James is settled.
Okay, great. And someone who did think that Sarah was a migrant, now let us know why. Oops, wrong way. If you think Sarah is a migrant, let us know why.
Sarah has a choice to return, so it's not. She's a migrant for 1 year. They consider that it's a time limited.
Okay, great. And one more. Athena moved from East Street to West Street in Greytown. Now, Greytown is the little town that I live in. East Street and West Street are about 2 streets apart. Is Athena a migrant or is she not?
Okay, so Heidi is saying internal migrant, and many other they are saying is not. And I'm getting some yeses in that chat.
Okay, fantastic.
And
so here
I'm having that it's the same country, so it's not, she's not a migrant.
Okay, great. So now we can see if this was my classroom, I've used this little strategy. Now, obviously, if this was a lesson, I would have lots more examples that we would work through together. And I would also have you defend your response. So every time I did is or is not, I'd ask a few people from each side to defend their response, which we did a little bit of. You know, we had the idea of it has to be permanent or it doesn't have to be permanent. But we would spend a bit more time discussing the rationale there. I recognize that we only have a few minutes today, so we've moved through it really quickly, but I want you to think about what this means in terms of concept formation, because you can use this really flexibly. You can use this with very young children because there's no writing involved necessarily. I was saying the other day, if you wanted to use this in PE, you might ask them to do 5 star jumps if it is, and 6 push-ups if it's not, what, you know, if you want to keep your kids active and moving. But you can use it for any concept. Is healthy, is not healthy. Is biased, is not biased. Is an explorer, is not an explorer. Is an innovator, is not an innovator. So you can use it really flexibly. But it gives me a sense now, if I was teaching this classroom of 400 or 500 people, I recognize that we don't have a shared understanding of migration and that we might need to dig into some more micro concepts in the unit to build a common understanding of migration. So great strategy that you can use really flexibly. Now I wanted to move kind of zip round now to how we support students in generalizing, because that's the other piece of the model that's somewhat unique in a concept-based classroom. And I just want to give you 2 really quick strategies. So if we went to back to the generalizations that I was sharing when I shared the structure of knowledge and had a look at this generalization, differences in beliefs and cultural practices may lead to discrimination, isolation, and prejudice. If we were using this understanding in our classroom, we would need to make sure that at this investigate phase, we had studied lots of case studies of different migrants and been looking at the experience of those migrants. So we would need to make sure that we had some migrants who had experienced that, but we would also want to make sure that not every case study that we had was a case study of a migrant who had experienced that. Because it's also common to have a wonderful experience of migration and where you immerse yourself in a new culture. And, you know, when I moved to Egypt and lived in Egypt for 2 years, I certainly didn't experience discrimination, isolation, or prejudice. I was welcomed, made some really great friends, and had a wonderful time. But we want to make sure, if this is an understanding that we want students to come to, that they have plenty of opportunity to explore case studies there, to build, going the wrong way, to build to their understanding. But once they've been immersed in those case studies, we can simply use a sentence frame. So as a result of this learning, I want you to look across the different case studies of migrants, and we would have helped them probably to organize that into some kind of cross-comparison chart, and finish this statement. Differences in beliefs and cultural practices may ... Finish the statement. And we would be hoping that they would come to something like lead to discrimination, isolation, or prejudice. Now, some students might take the opposite, and the may might be the really positive experience, and that's okay too. So gives the opportunity for students to express their own understanding. So that sentence frame is a really powerful one to support students in generalizing. The sentence frame can be the beginning of the statement, or equally, it could be ... lead to discrimination, isolation, or prejudice, or may lead to discrimination, isolation, or prejudice. So you can use either part of the statement as your sentence frame. And one last one, conceptual questions. So if we wanted to come up with the same generalization, we could equally do it using a sentence frame. So looking across, and here we need to have those factual questions come before the conceptual question. So how did this person experience discrimination? What was the experience of this character, of this person that we interviewed? And then we ask them, why do migrants sometimes experience discrimination, isolation, or prejudice? And we want our students to articulate that it's those differences in beliefs and cultural practices. So they're two really quick strategies. If you are interested in learning more about concept-based curriculum, we do offer through Professional Learning International a range of workshops, online workshops. So we have one at the moment called Concept-Based Inquiry in Action, which is based on the book that Carla and I wrote, and it's filled with practical strategies. We also have concept-based curriculum instruction for the thinking classroom, and this is with Dr. Erickson and Dr. Lanning. It's really the only way to get a workshop with Dr. Erickson and Dr. Lanning now, because they have fully retired. But before they did that, I did manage to capture them and get them to video an online workshop for you. And then the third one is designing concept-based literacy lessons, which is led by Tiffany Brown. So that's the purple book, Ali, that you were interested in. Yes. Tiffany's organized a workshop around designing literacy lessons. And, if you're interested in just practical strategies to implement a concept-based approach, then this book is a good place to start, because it's filled with strategies like the 3 that I've shared today that you can try out in your classroom. And this is what Ali had done, so he can probably, if you're interested in finding out more, you can ask Ali about his experience as becoming a certified trainer. So we're offering that, actually it starts tomorrow for the next year, but then we'll offer it again next September as an online option. And hopefully by 2022, we'll be back to a face-to-face group in the Netherlands. If you're interested in becoming a certified trainer, then you can certainly reach out and contact me. If you're interested in finding out more, then you can follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @ProLearnInt. Or you can join this Facebook group. So we've got almost 8,000 members now in our Facebook group. It's a free Facebook group called Concept-Based Inquiry with Rachel French, where we share ideas. We always share upcoming workshops and information there. And Ali, I think you're also part of that group too, aren't you?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of people who are really interested and passionate about concept-based curriculum. So if you have questions, if you want to ask, share units, ask for feedback, there's a great group of people in there who will give you some feedback. And thank you to Ali and to the 4 Generations for Education team for putting this day together. So questions, Ali, what have we got?
Rachel, we have a list of questions, but let me share my screen for 1 second. I would like to guide the participants about the registration for the day and all the other events, and then people are asking about the paid certificate. So let me make it clear for everyone. I will share with you all these details also in the chat. So you will get a link about our website, and then the website will lead to the following. As you can see, this is the whole day. Started with Rachel. We will continue assessment and concepts with Andrea, and then we will have a music session with Fernando. We take a short break for all the people who are asking about Arabic session. We have an Arabic session. It will be 2 p.m. Dubai time, and check all the timing that we shared with you here for the time zone. I know it's a little bit confusing. Early years attendees, check our drawing in the early years with our expert Debbie. And then if you are an additional language teacher, or you know you have an additional language department at your school, I recommend David's session. And to finish the day after 7 session online, we are going to have some PE and some exercises. So we are not going to sit for the last session, Rachel. We have also some movement for them in the session with Mihai. Now, for all the people who are asking about the paid certificate and how you can get them, and just this is to support us, you will go at the paid section, and then in the paid section, you will see the concept day where you are going to get the links. You can get individual certificates per session, or you can get the whole package for the whole day if you are attending our 6th session in English, which it will be cheaper for you. How do I recommend or order the certificates? It's very easy online. I will go here. I will check that I need this. I go to my payment, and then I will check out like you are buying anything on Amazon, and then you will have the title here, proceed to checkout, and then you will do the payment. If you are facing any problem, you can contact me and email us. You have all the details on the website, and we only take a credit card. So those certificates, unfortunately, I'm Lebanese, and I know currently in Lebanon, we have a difficult situation. Credit cards are not working. This is the only way to do this. I hope you enjoyed the learning, even if you don't have the certificate. I still have a few minutes with Rachel. So Rachel, let's go with the question. And question number 1, people ask about the resources and the books. Are they available online as ebooks?
They are available online as ebooks. So you can get them from either the publisher, Corwin Press, has a hard copy or an ebook version, and Amazon also has hard copies and ebooks available.
Majid or Captain Majid is asking about Arabic concept-based books. Majid, check my YouTube channel. I'm sharing with you plenty of books. One of them also is included Rachel book, and I'm sharing in the series about the books in Arabic, and I have something for the Arabic speakers. Catherine is asking, do we have anything about dance? I wish, but I don't have a speaker who will talk about dance today. You can join our music session and you can get inspired from Fernando, because I think we will have some conceptual understanding connected to all the arts. Now, if I want to go to the following question, Rachel, how we integrate technology with concepts and technology in concept-based unit, any recommendation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess there's 2 parts to that. Partly is you're integrating the use of technology for students who are, learning. So like I was saying, that we move in a digital learning platform. We move to using different platforms like Padlet and Jamboard, and just giving students the experience of using different technology. But technology and design is a process-based discipline, so we can use conceptual understandings or build conceptual understandings specific to that design process, specific to the creative thinking that's involved in technology, and support students in really developing their skills and their confidence and their mindset around becoming designers and solving problems with technology around coding and those sorts of things. So it's like any skills-based discipline.
Okay, I have a question from Tan, and he or she asking how to design quality questions to facilitate concept-based inquiry in classroom. And I know we have different type of question. Maybe if you want to check quickly or to tell us quickly, Rachel, about the type of questions.
Sure, we have 3 different types of questions in a concept-based curriculum. We have factual questions, and our factual questions are the questions that really provide the grounding and the examples of those concepts. So those factual questions are locked in time, place, or situation. And it might be, for example, we were using migration as an example today. How did the character in my name jar feel about moving to a new culture? So that's locked in the particular context of a text, but those factual questions are very important in building examples of the concept. And then we move to our conceptual questions, which transfer across time, place, and situation. So how do migrants experience, whatever it is, or how do migrants experience discrimination, or why? Probably is a better question. Why might migrants experience discrimination? So there it's conceptual because we're not talking about a specific migrant or a specific time, place, or situation. We're talking about an idea that transfers, and that could be true to any migrant at any time. And then our third type of question is our debatable question. So debatable questions can be factual or conceptual, but they have no right or wrong answer. We're really eliciting student thinking, creating the opportunity to express opinions and share ideas.
Okay, the list is very long, Rachel, but it's the time to say thank you for everyone. For the people who are asking for the certificate, it will be emailed in the next 48 hours, the time to create them and to do them. I'm going to take a very quick break, and then I will see you if you are going to join us in assessment and concepts, the following webinar. I hope you are going to enjoy the day. Thank you, Rachel, again for being available and ready to join us today. I highly recommend the work of Rachel. I highly recommend also the Institute if you are looking to become certified trainer with Lynn Erickson Institute. See you in 15 minutes and have an excellent afternoon, Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great, enjoy the day for all of those with other sessions. Great. Thanks, Ellie.
So goodbye for all the people live on Facebook. I'm going to stop the live stream here, stop the recording, and